Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode we continue to delve even ever further into the wizarding world created by J.K. Rowling with the 2022 fantasy adventure Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, the third movie in the now expanded Fantastic Beasts arm of the Wizarding World franchise, with this being the 11th movie in the series overall, and as directed once again by David Yates, who once again more than continues his legacy within the franchise with his 7th directorial entry into the series. This movie follows on a number of years later from the events of the last, where we left the series' now main antagonist, Grindelwald, as now played by Mads Mikkelsen, who indeed takes over the role from Johnny Depp, having previously taken on the infamous character in the aforementioned movie, amassing his followers and looking to start a war between the Muggles and the magical world. Standing in his way is Newt Scamander, as played by Eddie Redmayne, a magi-zoologist who is looking to stop Grindelwald from getting his hands on a wondrous creature known as the Quillin, with the ability to see potential future events and a particular talent for seeing into somebody's true soul. Knowing the true horror that could unfold if Grindelwald is allowed to continue on his terrifying mission, and against the menacing truth that Grindelwald has the ability to see future events before they even occur, and thus any plans kind of constructed to go against him would be doomed before they even began, Albus Dumbledore, as played by Jude Law, puts together a team including Newt's brother Theseus, as played by Callum Turner, Newt's nomad friend Jacob Kowalski, as played by Dan Fogler once again, Professor Eileen Hicks, as played by Jessica Williams, Yusuf Kama, as played by William Nadylam, and Newt's ever-faithful and indispensable assistant, Bunty Broadacre, as played by Victoria Yeates, in order to put in place a plan to confuse and subvert Grindelwald's visions and stop him from ultimately becoming the magical world's overall supreme leader, the Mugwump, I think, when it being become too late to put a stop to his planned atrocities. In executing their plan, or rather lack thereof, the team travelled to Berlin, Germany, where they must use all of their cunning amid rising tensions mounting on both sides within the wizarding community, in order to thwart Grindelwald's plans and show him for the infectious presence that he truly is. Now, even with the more kind of lacklustre affair of the last movie, 2018's Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, my anticipation for this movie was still very high. I do love the franchise as a whole, and you know, to get immersed once again within the wizarding world is always a true treat to behold, and a spectacle regardless, you know? And I must say that this entry goes a long way in trying to kind of correct some of the wrongs of the last. It's not quite as polished or carries quite the same presence as the first, 2016's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, but it carries a relatively involved story and starts to kind of level the field with many of the series' characters, feeling a lot more comfortable in the process and kind of re-injecting some of the fun and the playfulness that had been, you know, that had been kind of the draw for me to this aspect of the Wizarding World franchise in the first place. Once more, we have a movie that, you know, manages to weave a decent, if a decent enough, tapestry of kind of myth, magic and mystery. This time with a plot that would feel quite right at home in one of the classic kind of midnight espionage thrillers such as 39 Steps or The Third Man. This time around, we had a hook which kind of brought focus to the story, with a mission to thwart Grindelwald's plans, you know, which we then set against 1932's Berlin, gave it this kind of real kind of gritty kind of spy drama-esque quality that managed to kind of raise the stakes, if but only a little. Redmayne brings the character of Newt back with conviction, and his love for the creatures he studies and protects more than shines through once again, bringing much of the movie's emotional core. It's a shame that it's not as heavy with Fantastic Beasts as its predecessors. You can pretty much count them on one hand, but those which feature are still more than enchanting enough, and this time we do have kind of this central involvement with the overall plot. This time we do make much of Newt and his fantastical case, you know? Even if we don't kind of venture inside to really savour the delights on this occasion. Fogler, returning as Jacob, is an absolute icing on the cake once more. And he certainly has more of the pie this time around, with a more heartfelt and involved story arc. Becoming an unwitting key player, if you like, in the overall master plan. But bouncing off the adventure and again feeding off the spectacle of it all once more, as we do too. Lifted, you know, it kind of lifted the tone of the movie and brought back some of the charm the last movie was missing. This time around, Jacob is paired predominantly with Professor Hicks, who is a brilliantly fun new addition to the cast, bringing kind of a real classy but sassy, you know, character with some great energy and some amazing magical moments, which plays against Jacob in some real quirky ways. Like they're out on kind of this school trip, you know, at times, you know, brilliantly playful, with some excellent chemistry. The overall plot is not quite as succinct as it could have been. It's a little sloppy in places, I felt, and does feel a little repetitive from what we've kind of seen from the franchise to date. And I would say that the movie doesn't really have a kind of consistent energy to really hold attention throughout. You do kind of feel yourself like kind of going in fits and starts, you know? And it can get a little bit confusing at times. It's not always clear what the actual end game is or how sinister the whole affair will get, you know? Nor how the individual pieces actually tie together. It still doesn't feel like we're quite heading somewhere at this time, but I think it's certainly more of an enjoyable instalment on the whole than its predecessor, and indeed feels a lot more expansive in scope and direction, as we do get to explore a few new locations with a tremendously cinematic feel, which further expand what we know about this universe already, full of awe and mystery, which all in all does a fair job, all said, at bringing the series back into the fold, where it probably should be. Mikkelsen as Grindelwald certainly brought a different energy than Johnny Depp, who had played the villainous role in the last movie, but I don't think either really delved kind of deeper into the character, other than kind of passing a surface level kind of villainy kind of skill. Mikkelsen does a decent job, but plays it very plain. Almost no emotion at all, and it felt a very cold performance, I thought, which is certainly a different take to Depp. It worked either way for what it was and for what either film kind of did with the role, you know, but it still felt like something was missing. We never truly got to know or really understand Grindelwald, or even how he is affecting and inflicting the wizarding world, which still made the stakes relatively low, or feel relatively low, if you know, in fact. Even though the film certainly had a more menacing kind of visage, and probably some of the most gory and vividly disturbing moments of the whole entire franchise to date. As a side note, it was curious that they didn't make anything of the transition. Mikkelsen was just simply Grindelwald through and through, at least in Fantastic Beasts, where I find them. I can't remember the guy who played him, but we did at least transition to Johnny Depp, you know? Anyway, in and amongst the fabulous creatures, we do get more from some old faces, namely Newt's resident partners in crime, Thicket and Niffler, who have been with him on his travels since the start, with each kind of getting more screen time this time around, and even their own part in the chicanery and subterfuge, with amusing consequences as well. It was certainly great to see their roles expanded and feel kind of more inclusive by design than simply just an amusing sidebar attractions, you know? Overall, this movie is certainly more playful and exuberant entry into the Wizarding World franchise for what it is than the last, you know? And it was certainly more involved. It certainly feels like elements are now kind of starting to come together, although it still continues to kind of come across pretty convoluted for what it actually is. It does take a lighter approach, which brings back much of the magic we had seen previously in the franchise, and much of the character chemistry retains with a couple of brilliantly new additions, which provide some much needed energy and charisma. It might not be wholly consistent in its delivery, but at least this time around it does feel like we're on an adventure. This time with a nod to some kind of these espionage classics with its very own kind of very spy-style caper, full of daring escapes and clandestine missions. Mixed amongst its subdued elements are some wonderfully enchanting creature creations once again, and some spectacular magical moments as well for sure. This time around, although the film could have been so much more, it certainly didn't disappoint, bringing much more heart and emotional toil wrapped within a reasonably entertaining story, which more than opened up new areas to explore and savour within the wizarding world. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk, and definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.